Yes.
Am I supposed to conduct periodical?
I don't know, sir. The circular came out by the sorry,
So
the
we
Center of
heard it was
Examination, and they have given a timetable, and the subject is
Ah,
there. So we all were wondering if there will be a periodical.
my goodness, that's news to me. When is it?
1 second, sir.
it was supposed to be scheduled on till 13th, so from 7 to 13, I guess. But it totally depends upon the faculty to conduct or not. I'm not sure it's.
Okay. Anyway, I'll check up. Okay. No one has told me. I was of the opinion that I'm supposed to conduct 7 quizzes totally for the course, and then 30 marks will be that online stuff in semester. I'll check up. In case it is there, it's okay. Okay. So last class, Priya, we are talking about synchronous and asynchronous communication. We are discussing digital communication, and in that there are two types basically: synchronous and asynchronous. Uh, Asynchronous had the problem was you require a start bit, then the data, then we had the stop bit. Okay. So there was some sort of overheads because each byte required three additional bits of data to be transmitted. Synchronous communication, on the other hand, does not have that problem, but implementation wise, the circuits and all is more complicated. So generally, you will still find asynchronous mode of communication. Okay. Now we'll start the other few more topics are there in digital communication. We'll just cover them. The first one is transmission efficiency. Uh, it is the accuracy, okay, efficiency, accuracy and speed with which information is sent and received over the communication media. So it's both how accurate the system is going to be and at what speed you can send the data. Definitely, you would like to have 100% accuracy. Accuracy means no errors. And speed means I would like to have the highest bandwidth. Now we are talking about earlier it was 2G, now it is 4G, 5G is going to come up. So everyone wants higher speed. But there is always a limitation to how much we can, at what speed we can really transmit. And that subject is called the information theory. This is what these ECE guys, they have one full chapter, full course on information theory. We will not go into too much of it, but at least you should know the basic fundamentals about it. So the first question is at what speed I can transmit in a transmission medium. Okay, transmission medium can be anything. It can be a optical fiber cable, or it can be wireless, whatever it is. So it can be any medium, but I would like to know what is the maximum rate of transmission. So that is given by this Hartley's law, which simply states that maximum channel bandwidth is 2 times the bandwidth. So suppose your bandwidth is 1 kilohertz. 1 kilohertz is 1000 hertz. So the maximum bits I can transmit is 2000 bits per second. Bits per second. So this is the maximum limit what Hartley gave. But actually he did it for analog communication. Okay. When he formulated this, he had only analog communication in mind. So you can it wasn't very appropriate at that point of time. Then Shannon Hartley, then Shannon actually modified it. And the problem with this Hartley's thing was he assumed it's a noiseless assumption. Basic assumption was no noise and very ideal transmission medium, which probably even the fiber optic cable will closely approach towards that ideal state, but generally it's going to be a lossy transmission medium. Like suppose I'm transmitting from an aircraft to ground station, definitely there is going to be noise in the wireless communication. So you can't really say that there's not going to be any noise. So the improvement over this formulation was by Shannon, who considered the signal to noise ratio of the uh, medium of transmission. So signal to noise ratio, if you remember, we saw in the previous course, like this is the frequency and this is the noise level, and your signal is somewhere here. Let us say this is at level A and noise is at level B. So A by B was the signal to noise ratio. This we have covered in our avionics course. So we included this signal to noise ratio also in the formulation and came out with the this particular formula. And this is what is will give you the upper limit of how much you can transmit. That is how many bits you can transmit in a second for a given channel, and channel in turn is going to be specified in terms of bandwidth. And if you remember, when we talked about filters also, we talked about bandwidth. So it is the maximum frequency range which can be accommodated in a medium. So this is the Shannon-Hartley theorem, and this is the basis of all information theory. But for the class, I want you to just plug in some numbers and find out there is something very strange about these two formulations. Okay. I leave it to the class to study this closely. These two formulas, you plug in some numbers and then it is going to give you some very weird results. And then you refer to your book and find out why this variation is coming up between between Hartley's theorem and Shannon-Hartley's theorem. Hartley's theorem said it's a noiseless medium, whereas Shannon included the noise in the formulation, and then he came out with some numbers. So you put in some numbers, you will find that there is some ambiguity in the whole thing. But there is a reason behind that ambiguity. So I leave it as a sort of an assignment for you people to find out. Okay. Now coming to modem. So computers are going to give some digital signal. Let's say you're transmitting over a normal cable wire, okay, a copper cable. Definitely it's not going to accept digital signal, it will accept only voice signal. So you have to convert this digital signal to the voice signal and then transmit it on the cable, like older generation telephones. I don't know whether you people would have seen, there used to be a black wire which used to run from the BSNL pole to your house, landlines. Nowadays, I don't know whether landlines are there or not. So the other end also you'll get voice, and this voice means voice frequency in the voice range, okay, up to 3 kilohertz. You get this, so it's analog in nature, okay. So this voice signal again has to be deciphered, and then you get the digital signal, and then it goes into the computer. Okay, so this conversion of digital to voice signal and voice to digital is the function of modem. So it actually stands for modulation and demodulation. It modulates a digital signal to a voice signal, then demodulates a voice signal into a digital signal. That's how this modem came. It's modulation plus demodulation. So it will be in both directions, okay. So you can't have two modems, so one for transmission and one for reception. So the information flow is bidirectional. Now this medium can be anything. Okay, once you have this modem, you can put it on the wireless link, and that's what aircrafts do. Okay, there is nothing like telephone network or cable. You directly give it to the wireless transmitter or wireless receiver. Connect the modem to the wireless transmitter or receiver. You will be able to do the transmission or reception of data. So that's where the modem fits. So all aircrafts will have this wireless modem fitted in, along with their radio sets. There are n number of variations in how you achieve this modulation. Basic, basically there are 4 types. One is called frequency shift keying. The second is called phase shift keying. The other one is called quadrature amplitude modulation. We'll see that, and then there's something called as quadrature phase shift. Out of this, you will find this FSK to be most widely used modulation because it's very simple. Okay, and at least earlier generation aircraft equipment did not transmit too much of data, so this was good enough. And since it was simple, naturally the weight and all this volume and all is very less, so people prefer this frequency shift keying. This is how it works. So this is a digital data, what you see at the top. And this is the modulated signal. So whenever there is a 1, the x-axis is time, okay? Whenever there is a 1, so up to this there is 1, you send one frequency, that is 1270. And whenever there is a 0, you send the next frequency 1070. So a bit 1 corresponds to 1270 hertz, and bit 0 is 1070. Now these numbers are all some industry standards. Okay, don't ask me why it is 1270 or 1070. Someone has fixed it, and we continue to use it. But what you have to understand is, now a digital signal which cannot be sent on a wireless medium is now converted to a signal which is within the audio range. So now these are just basically 2 tones, okay, audible tones. 1070 you can hear, 1270 also you can hear. All you have to do is this signal you just give it to your wireless transmitter, and then you transmit it out. Instead of, see, earlier we saw in analog communication, it was a mic which was connected to the transmitter. So instead of the mic, all you have to do is connect this modem output to the transmitter. And as far as transmitter is concerned, it just sees 2 different voice signals. So it is capable of transmitting it. So it goes out. And on the reception side, the receiver is just getting 2 voice signals. So it can also demodulate it. And then you feed it to the modem where it gets demodulated into the digital signal. Priya, any doubts on this frequency shift key?
No, sir.
If you are given a fork, a spoon and a knife, which hand will you use for eating? How will you use the fork, spoon and knife? It has nothing to do with electronics, okay? Because tomorrow you join some MNC company and you attend some dinner with them, and You're supposed to follow some etiquettes. So how will you use a fork, spoon, and a knife? With which hand will you use what? Anyone? Sandhita is telling me that better not attend such dinners.
No, sir.
And that too, if you are told to eat chicken with a fork and knife, you have to be very careful who's sitting in front of you.
So fork is usually, I guess, left.
Fork?
And the spoon on the right. Fork on the left hand.
Yeah.
In the left. Spoon
Yeah.
on the right. For cutting, they take right hand. The knife on the right hand.
The fork on the left hand, right? Yeah?
Yes,
Okay.
fork on the left hand.
And then you can use spoon or knife with your right hand. There's no third hand, okay, so you have to use this one, right hand. Just a diversion, okay. Why I told you was that's how you remember FSK, fork, spoon, knife.
Oh.
The other form of modulation is binary phase shift key. So here, instead of shifting the frequency, I'm going to shift the phase of the incoming signal. So whenever there is a 1, some signal is going on at constant frequency. The moment it sees a 0, it changes the phase. Okay. So it goes on with the same thing, and whenever there is a 1, again it changes phase. But since bit time is already decided, you will be able to uh, understand that it's two zeros which are coming or two ones coming together. So it's change in phase and not change in frequency. The other thing is QPSK, quadrature phase shift keying, in which what they are going to do is they shift the phase as per the bits. So instead of just one bit representing a particular instant, it will be 2 bits. So if this is 0, 0, that is the amplitude, let us say, is 1, but angle is 45 degrees. Then you have 135 will be 0, 1, 1, 1, 0, and you'll have 1, 1. So depending on the phase of the system, you can represent 2 bits at a given time, and I think it's called D bit. Representing 2 bits is called, nibble is 4 bits, D bit is 2 bits. So at each instant you will be transmitting 2 data bits. But basically you're going to change the phase of transmission. So you can extend this concept to n number of states. So instead of having just one amplitude and one or 4 phases, I can have 4 amplitudes, right, of the same angle. That is also possible. And now I can have similar thing like here with 2 different angles. So 2 angles and 4 angles, all these combinations are possible. So more complicated the system becomes. But for you, if you just understand what is FSK and little bit on binary phase shift keying, that's more than enough. How do you finally say whether my system is all right or not? Like we have to define some parameter, and that's given by the bit error rate. How many bits are going to be in error, or number of errors that's going to occur in a given unit time is called bit error rate. So higher the bit error rate, you can say the less efficient is my system. and that will depend on the signal to noise ratio. Greater the noise, even by intuition, you can say that more is the number of bits which are in error. So this complete information theory is all about finding out. Info theory is nothing but finding out what is the maximum bits per second and what is the bit error rate for any given channel and given type of modulation. And type of modulation is this FSK, BPSK, QPSK, QAM and all this stuff. So this complete thing is about. So they go into quite a lot of details to estimate what's going to be the bit error rate. That's the end result of information theory. Okay, now no system is perfect. Okay, we are going to, in spite of all this, there is going to be errors. Okay, you're taking care of everything, bandwidth and all, but still you're going to have errors. So you'll have to somehow detect this error and then correct it. What we'll be seeing is just detection of an error. So there are two ways by which you can do it. The first and the most simplest thing is called parity, and the second one is called cyclic redundancy check. This is extremely efficient. Theoretically, it can catch 99.99% of transmission errors, but it involves a lot of calculations, okay, which means you are wasting your processor time. Most places, it's always better to go for this parity error checking and try and do some correction. Once you detect it, you can always correct it. Now let's see how we are going to generate this parity. You can do it on your own. Okay, let's take some arbitrary input. Okay, a 7-bit ASCII. I'm just giving some numbers. Okay, don't. Some data, and I want you to calculate what is the parity. And how we are going to do it is, sorry, this is 1. So 2 bits are taken and given to an XOR gate. XOR gate, initially I think we saw that earlier also. If 2 inputs are same, that is here it is 0, 0, you get a 0. If both are, that is, similar inputs will give a 0, dissimilar inputs will give a 1. Now can you all just work out and let me know what's going to come out finally as even parity or whatever it is. We'll just see what, let me know what is the output here at this stage.
Sir, what's the 7th bit?
You can mention the third one, so the last one.
Yeah, last one. Yeah. Can you see it? Yeah.
So it's 1.
Okay. Can we go step by step, Priya, so that everyone follows it? So what is the output in the first gate?
1, sir.
1, good. Yeah. Second gate?
It's
I just
0.
number it so that everyone can
Yes.
understand. Yeah. Second gate?
It's 0, sir.
0. Okay.
And 1.
1.
1
This
again.
anyway is 1. Yeah. So now going back to the fourth gate, it is 1, 0 is
1, sir.
Okay.
And 0.
0.
So again 1.
1. Yeah. So it's generating 1, right? So how many bits are even? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Now I'll write this again. 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. I'm writing the data, okay? Whatever is coming in. 1. So number of ones is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I would like to send it as an even parity. So I add this 1 over here. So now if you count the number of ones, see, I'm not changing the data, okay? I'm just adding, this is my data. I am adding a parity bit. Now if you count the number of ones, it is forcing it to become an even parity number. That's what it means. Parity is either even or odd. This is a NOT gate. So if you have decided that I want to use odd parity, this will have become 0. So let's say we have gone for even parity. So what on the reception side, it knows that the parity bit is 1. Okay. This data goes into a parity generator on the, now this is at the receiver, okay? The earlier slide was transmitter. So the output is anyway going to be 1. So Priya, what will be the output now of this comparator?
0, sir.
0, very good. So which means error is 0.
Yes, sir.
In case this data what has come, okay, instead of having 5 ones, it had become 4 ones, okay. So it would have given some other bit, and now it would have caught this error, and this would have become 1. Now the disadvantage is, obviously you'll ask me what happens if 2 bits become errors. Then there's a problem. Okay, this scheme cannot really catch such errors. If just 1 bit is an error, definitely you'll be able to detect such errors. Okay, now you have let's assume that to make things simple, let's assume that just 1 bit is an error. Now, how do we correct it? Now, this is detection. Okay. You are detecting it. Now, how do I correct it? So, let's say this is a transmitter, this is receiver. This fellow also will have a transmitter and receiver. Now this receiver has detected one error. Okay, in a bit it has in a data frame it has detected one error. So the easiest way to do it is you will again send a request for retransmission. Request for transmission. So this fellow, the source, will get this request for transmission, and again it will start transmitting it, and hopefully it will not have any error. Till the time there is no error, the source keeps transmitting data. Definitely it's not a very good method because you are occupying the channel. But for simple systems, this is how they do it. So we just detect it and then correct it. An extension of this parity is cyclic redundancy check, in which you don't require so much of overheads. You accumulate all data and do some stuff in which you can definitely not only detect it, it even corrects the data for errors. But that is slightly complicated to understand cyclic redundancy check. Though the reference book partially it says explains how it works. Okay. So that's all on error detection and correction. This is again just an example. If you want sequence of bits, if you see in the top row, let's say A, here it is 1, 1, 2. You want even parity, so I send a 0. If the same data I want to be sent with odd parity, then I should add a 1. So whatever I told in this slide, same thing. You're just forcing it to either even parity or odd parity. Okay. Now the last part in this digital communication is something called as wide band modulation. When I talked about advantages and disadvantages of AM and FM, FM obviously we all know, we are all using FM nowadays. Noise is really low. You get really good clarity and excellent reproduction of music. But it all comes at the cost of very high bandwidth. This AM, on the other hand, the bandwidth is very low, which, Priya, do you remember how do you calculate the bandwidth of an AM signal?
So I'm not sure.
Yeah, frequency of upper sideband minus frequency of lower
Frequency of
sideband.
lower side.
Lower sideband. Right? And that used to be very less, right? Around 10 kilohertz at the most. And that was good enough. But the problem with AM is it's highly noisy. And bandwidth, after all, is a costly resource. So no one wants to use more bandwidth. But initially, it all started with aviation only. When they wanted secure communication between military aircraft, they came out with this concept of wideband. That is, they want to really increase the bandwidth and came out with something called as spread spectrum. So again, it's a literal meaning. You spread the bandwidth. That's what it is. Intentionally, you want to spread the bandwidth. Not just spreading its wide bandwidth, really wide bandwidth. There are now two types in spread spectrum. One is called, first one is called frequency hopping. The second one is called direct sequence, DS or SS. It's called DS and frequency hopping. So initial military aircrafts, they were using frequency hopping. Then came the direct sequencing. That finally came into your mobile phones as initially GSM, and then nowadays you use this code division multiple access. So that's what is direct sequence. So what you see in your mobile is a direct sequence modulation. Now, this frequency of hopping transmitter, what you do is again you're getting serial data, binary data, and then you send it to an FSK modulator. So it's a voice which is coming out, voice signal, and then this part is normal transmitter. Okay. This is what you have all seen, transmitter. But if you remember, in a transmitter, the modulator, we called it as modulator. One of the input was the voice signal, and then we had something called as local oscillator. You remember, Priya? Huh? That's what we learned in the analog communication.
Yes, sir.
And this local oscillator used to have one frequency which was pre-tuned. Okay. So if you say 109 FM, it's 109 megahertz. So you used to tune this to the particular thing, local oscillator, and you just continue. Now what you do is, instead of a single frequency, you can actually have multiple frequency. And this multiple frequency is coming from a pseudo-random, it's done in a very pseudo-random way and goes to the synthesizer. Synthesizer again is something you all have seen, the keyboard which you use, right? You press different keys, it generates different frequencies. Same way, here also the pseudo-random code generator will ensure that the frequency is, different frequencies are selected, and in a very random, to the outsider it will look like a really random sequence. So how this pseudo-random code is selected? So this is this. Okay, I think this is a bit too much. Okay, you give a 8-bit data, and then if you follow this sequence, you will find that what is coming out will be a very pseudo-random code. It's a matter of details. Okay, so don't worry about this. Basically, now I think the next slide should make it clear. So x-axis you have time. So instead of transmitting at say 109 megahertz, now each bit time or whatever time slot you have set, you're going to change the frequency. Okay, now frequency is changing. It's no longer constant 109. So each time interval, which is also called as dwell time, the frequency is going to shift in a random manner. It's not changing like this, okay, in a linear fashion and then coming down, like what we saw in a continuous wave radar. If you remember continuous wave radar, the frequency was like this. It used to increase and then come down. Whereas in this frequency of sequence generator, it's a random frequency. Now, the obvious question is how such a, now it looks like, now if you look at the spectrum, now what you're seeing is all random, totally noisy signal. Okay, this is frequency. So it's just jumping from one frequency to another, which looks like as if it's a noisy signal. And how can the receiver be able to get some intelligence out of it? The easiest way is this pseudo-random code generator, which starts with some number, is known to the other guy. Okay, so they both have similar pseudo-random code generators, and something similar to synchronous communication. Both are synchronized, but now the synchronization is not only the start and stop bits; it's also the frequency. So if he is starting with some X frequency, the receiver also will know that it's transmitting at X. So they keep doing it. Okay, so this was how initially. Now the problem is, unless you know the code, no one else can really access your transmission. That's why it was secure in nature. Okay, so that's how you get the security point. The security comes in. So the third person can never make out what you're transmitting. Initial concept was actually from the radars. They didn't want the radars to be jammed, so they used to have this random frequency hopping in radars. But then the communication guys also picked up this technology and then they started using it. So 80s and all, this was how the secure communication was carried out. And improvement over that, okay, now it says that it's resistance to jamming and interference. But then the jammers also caught up in technology and they were able to really lock on to such random jumping of signals. Okay, so people came out with the next concept called as direct sequence spread spectrum. Direct sequence spread spectrum. Now, what they did was, this is your original data. I just try to follow this. Okay. Initially, it is 0, up to this bit time it is 0, and then it becomes 1. Now what you have to do is have one chipping is called chipping sequence, which is at a much higher rate. If this is at 10 hertz, the chipping sequence will be at 10 kilohertz. That's the sort of modulation you do, but with a particular code. Okay, and that code is your SIM number nowadays. So you XOR these two data. This is a chipping sequence. This and this you XOR, and then you get the output. So output signal, if you see the bit time is much higher than the original bit time. Okay, so if the bit time is more, the bandwidth is increased. See, bit time has become less because of this chipping sequence. If bit time is more, bandwidth is more, or you are spreading the bandwidth. That's how the name wideband modulation came out. Now, so you do it so fast, but at the transmission is at the same frequency. Okay, earlier thing, the transmission frequency was changing. Here the frequency is same, but it's all noisy, absolutely noisy, and very high bandwidth. The advantage is multiple people can use multiple chipping sequences. So you will have, that's how we have thousands of people using the same cell phone tower. Though the frequency is same, but they're all the SIM cards are having different numbers. So they will be able to access the channel. More than 1-2 users can access the channel at the given time. So this is how this direct sequence spreading came out. I think we can just work out. Maybe next class I'll give you some. So basically that's how the two wideband things came out: frequency hopping and spread spectrum. And the last thing is telemetry. So here generally what you're doing is some real world parameters like exhaust gas temperature of the engine. So that's an analog signal. So you send it to an analog to digital converter. You have a digital signal. This goes into an FSK modulator, which is nothing but voice signal. Transmit it. Of course, there will be, before that, you'll have some parity generator also. They'll transmit it and then you receive it here. It's again voice, FSK demodulator. And if at all you require to convert it to digital to analog, you do it. Otherwise, take the data directly. And check for parity. And access the data. And now this parameter here, you're going to have a time division multiplexing. So you have a multiplexer, you'll have parameter 1 to parameter n. So you can have n parameters, time division multiplexed, and then it goes on to the channel. So that's how the basic telemetry works. So that ends the module 1, that is electronic communication. Okay. Any doubts on today's class? So we basically just repeat it. First thing is we found out how much can be transmitted in a given medium, and that how much was answered by two laws. One was Hartley's law, and the second one was Shannon-Hartley's law. Shannon-Hartley included this practical channel with add noise, whereas Hartley was assumed that it was a noiseless medium. Then we talked about modems. modulation, and modem stands for modulation and demodulation. 3 types of modulations are used: frequency shift keying, phase shift, binary phase shift keying, and then quadrature phase shift keying. Then we saw how an FSK works, binary phase shift keying, and a little bit of QPSK. Finally, to quantify the performance of any modem, we talked about bit error rates. So it's not only maximum bits which can be transmitted, but how many bits are going to be in error. If there is an error, you can detect it by 2 methods. One is called as parity, and the second one is called cyclic redundancy check. And what we saw was parity can again have 2 different types: odd parity and even parity. So how to generate a parity and how to detect an error, a parity error. That's what we saw in this. So checking. First is generation, next is checking at the receiver side. Then we talked about wideband modulation, which are of 2 types. One is the frequency hopping, and the second one was the direct sequence. So frequency hopping is nothing but, in a pseudo-random way, you change the transmitted frequency, whereas in direct sequence, you are XORing the initial data with a very high rate chipping sequence, and the resultant signal occupies a lot of bandwidth. And if you only know the chipping sequence, you will be able to access the data. That's the basic funda of all your mobile communication. And whatever we studied in this electronic communication, so all these things put together forms the telemetry of an aircraft system. So all, as I told you initially, any prototype development of an aircraft or rocket will definitely have a telemetry system. So these are the building blocks for of any telemetry systems. Okay. So that ends module 1. And the next module we'll be talking more about navigation aids, and out of that only 2, that is radars and TCAS. These 2 systems will go in a little bit of more depth, and in radars, to make things interesting, I'll talk about electronic warfare also. Okay. Priya, anything you want to ask me?
No, sir.
From the class? So Priya, you are in your native place or you come back home?
So I came back, sir.
Okay. Chennai, right?
No, sir, Coimbatore, sir.
Coimbatore. I get confused. Okay. Okay then. Thanks, Priya. We'll meet in the next class.
Yes.